Good afternoon. I'd like to welcome everyone to this week's edition of Imperial as One's Belonging series. It's a series where we have candid interviews with individuals from the Black, Asian and minority ethnic communities. And each week I say this, that I'm really looking forward to the conversation that I'm going to have, but I don't know what it is. Each week, the next person, everybody's story is different. And this week, I'm telling you, we've got a story on our hands. And I'm going to stop the talking and I'm going to just introduce our guest. And our guest is Dr. Lynda Ince Greenaway. And Dr. Greenaway, or Dr. Ince Greenaway, she's a life coach, she's an author, but she's so much more. And her story is really fascinating. So Lynda, welcome to Imperial as One's Belonging series, and I know we're going to have a really good conversation. So I'm going to start off by asking a question which I always ask, which is, can you tell me about what it was that gave you your sense of belonging as you were growing up? What gave you your sense of belonging and identity?
Well, I think it was growing up in a family where my parents cared about me, they nurtured me and helped me to understand who I was. So I had a very strong sense of identity, and I think it was connected to my family, but also connected to the community in which I grew up. So I had friends, I went to church, and there was a body of people who, you know, sort of where I belong. So my sense of belonging had many different strands, but essentially it was about my family and what they taught me about myself. You know, so that was really important to me, to be loved, to be cared for, to have this affinity, and also to be connected, because I was very connected with what was going on around me. And that was very important in terms of knowing who I was and where I belong.
Right, so the family unit was incredibly important to you.
Yes.
They gave you the grounding, they gave you that sense of love, that sense of you're precious to us.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Definitely they did. I felt included. I felt part of the family. I have 6 sisters and I had 1 brother, but we were all loved and we were all cosseted. We were all cared for.
Yeah.
And I never felt that there was one of my siblings that was loved more than me. Of course, you do have sibling rivalry and you're all, you know, so rallying there for love and affection. But I never felt that especially my mother, I never felt that she loved one of my siblings more than she. In fact, I think I was probably one of the favorites. Yeah. I couldn't resist that. I know that my sisters will get me for that if they see this video.
I can clearly see that you were loved. You've got this radiant smile. Tell me about, as you were growing up, was there any things which happened to you? How were you viewed within the community? From your accent, I can tell that you wasn't necessarily born here, but can you tell us how that all came about?
Well, I grew up in a very small community in a specific area in Barbados. I was born in Barbados, you know, and you know that the islands are not huge. So you were known in the community where you live. So I was well known by all of the people in that avenue where we lived. And there was one thing about adults in those days, that if as a child you did something that was naughty, and I did a lot of things that were naughty, they would come to my mom's door and knock and complain and say, like, she's a bit out of order. So, you know, but that it was because people cared.
Yeah.
And because people just simply looked out for children and looked out for who they were associating with and any strange people that came into the neighborhood. So that was the kind of a setting in which I grew up. It was a very small, connected community where everybody knew everybody, and people just helped each other.
Yeah.
So it was very, very different from this country where kind of you come in, you lock your door and you're in there, you could be in there for days and nobody knows that you're there.
Yeah.
So, but it was very different when I was growing up, very small community and a lot of connections.
Okay. What was it like for you at school? Because it was a small community, I suspect that, again, everybody knew everybody. So it wasn't like, you know, the bullying or anything like that could take place. How was it for you going in school? How did you perform, etc.?
Initially, when I went to school, I was doing okay. You know, I didn't go to one of the top schools, but I was okay. I was doing okay. So, and I enjoyed, because I had a very loving family. When I went to school, my parents were there. The school was around the corner from my home. So if anything happened, parents were expected to go into the school, but also teachers had this role of disciplining children. So they were almost, the teachers were almost like part of the family, and they knew you. So you had this sense of belonging that if you slipped up or if you went a little bit wrong, teachers would take you in hand. Sometimes the discipline would be, I would say, looking back at it today, I would say that the discipline was a little bit over the top, you know, but you knew that people knew you, knew your family, and knew where you came from. And there was that connection there. There was that affinity in school. So I did okay. I did well in school. I think if you're talking then about the first part of my education, I would say I did okay in Barbados, but it was when I came here that things changed drastically.
So what happened about this transition to the UK? What were the events leading up to you coming to the UK? Was there anything in particular that led to that decision being made, and how did it come about?
Yes, my father died when I was 12 years old.
Right.
He died suddenly over a weekend. He had cancer, pancreatic cancer, and that's one of the cancers that, you know, take you. So he came home. He was very ill one Friday evening, and by the Monday morning he was gone.
Wow.
You know, so it was drastic. It was a drastic loss, you know, that I had in you know, as I was growing up. And because of that, my mother had two children. Two of her oldest children were living here, and she decided that she would come to England to prepare to find a way for us, for her children, the other five that were left behind. So she came, and that was the first point at which I think I was separated, because she left us with a person who didn't really know us. She was a family friend. She didn't know us. And she was very unkind to us. And I had to go, myself and my siblings had to go and live with a family friend, you know. So that was where the survival spirit started, because I was separated from my mom, didn't have anyone, any other family member. And here was this stranger taking us into her home. So that led to the transition of coming up to England, because my mom was here for a year, and she was so distressed and distraught about what was happening to us, that she sent for us within a year. She did everything she could. She worked several jobs, and she sent for us, the five of us, within the year. And that was how I ended up here in England. But it all started with the death of my father.
So the death of your father, your mum came looking for a better life in the UK.
Better life, absolutely.
And so that you could all come across, and for the motherland, as it were, to a better.
Yes, excuse me. Yes.
Yeah. And so, but the people who you were left with weren't kind.
No.
If anything.
It was a woman who hadn't got any children. My mum just thought that because she didn't have any children, that, you know, this would be an opening for her to look after children, but it didn't turn out to be that way.
Yeah.
So, so we just suffered under her care. And it was for a year that we suffered like that until this other family just took us in. And that's what I mean about belonging.
Yeah.
And how the community kind of steps in. So we had this family stepping in and saying, come and live with us.
Yeah.
And that was how I survived that year of separation from my mum.
Wow. So within the space of a year, it was kind of like the loss of your father. It's almost like you experienced two losses.
Two losses.
In quick succession.
Yes, yes.
The loss of your father, and then the separation, almost like feeling like a loss because of the situation you now found yourself in.
Yes, absolutely.
What about the reunion then with your mother when you came to the UK? How was that?
Oh, the reunion was wonderful. It was just what it was. I didn't care what I left behind.
Right.
Although it was important, I didn't care, but just to be with my mom, and the reunion was wonderful because it was being with her that was really important to me. Seeing her again, touching her, just being in her presence. That reunion and us all coming together, because then I not only met up with my mom, but I met up with the other sisters that were here. So it felt like as though the family was complete again.
Yeah.
So that was a really significant time for me, and an important part of the transition, that process of transition, moving from one country and moving to another. But also it felt as though my education, we just been talking about education, it felt as though my education was truncated, because I left one system of education and had to come to another system of education, and I had to learn that very, very quickly.
How was that transition to the new education system? Were you able? It was tough.
It was tough. It was hard. Because if we stay with that theme of belonging, I didn't belong. And because of the factor of discrimination and racism, I was treated really badly in school. So, teachers just did not understand what it was like because there were just two of us, myself and my sister. So 2 Black girls in the entire school, coming to an unknown place. Accent is different. The whole organization, the structure of the school, not having friends and so on. All of that was very, very hard during this time of transition, So it was, I would say it was a very tough transition because, I wasn't coming to somewhere that I knew. It was a very, very long way from home. And it was very different as well.
Yeah. And the temperature was cold too. Right?
And the temperature, yes, and it was cold.
And you were a teenager at that time, so it's those transitioning things all happening at the same time in those formative years. So how did you get on at school? What were the aspirations of the teachers? What were your own aspirations? What did you think that you could achieve?
I had no aspirations.
Okay.
And teachers didn't have aspirations for me because they said they didn't give me advice about a career. In fact, they made negative assertions, and that was that you won't go to much, so this is what you're destined to be. You won't amount to much, so you might as well look for a job in Sainsbury's, So I didn't have that sense of I could achieve, and I left school actually quite disillusioned and feeling that there was nothing that I could do to change that, because that was what people had told me, and it was lies, and I actually believed the lies. For a long time, for many years, I believed that I couldn't achieve, and I didn't have that sense of aspiration that that I could move, I could go to where I wanted to go. If there was anywhere I wanted to go, wanted to study, that wasn't an option.
Right.
So
Wow. I want to. So, what happened after that? What kind of like leaving school, few qualifications? What were you think? What were you thinking? What was going to happen? How were you going to? What was going to happen to you?
Well, I actually, I didn't know. I started off. I said, okay, so my sisters are nurses, so I'll go into nursing. So I started out on a cadet course
Mhm,
in nursing.
mhm.
But when I was doing that, I had the good fortune to meet my first husband.
Okay.
I was on I was only 19
Yeah.
when I met him, or was I 18? No, I was in my late teens when I met him. And he was like a godsend, I would say, because of all the negative feelings that I had, which had been put into me,
Mhm,
and the fact that he was a positive person and he felt like as though, oh no, you can do whatever you want. He
mhm,
just said to me, but you've got a lot of potential and you can do whatever you want. And that was where it began. It actually began with him saying those words to me. You can do whatever you want to do. And it's all in your mind. It's all
mhm.
in your mind.
So
So,
he was an injection of positivity that you needed
yes,
come through. I'm going to say through the latter stage, through this negative education system. There was a
yes.
young man here now who was telling you, you've got potential, you can be whatever you want to be.
Yeah. It was good. It was fantastic.
I'm gonna be a bit cheeky now, right? What was it other than his good looks which helped you to believe that in what he was saying?
Um, it was just the conviction, I think. Other than his good looks, I think it was the conviction, and I think it was the love.
Mm-hmm.
I think I don't think, I know that he loved me, and he loved me from the first time that we met. And in fact, my name, everybody used to spell my name Linda. And
Yeah.
he said, I love you so much, I'm going to spell your name Lynda. So
Right.
then, so he just wanted to be different. So I had occasion to look at my birth certificate, and do you know, it was Lynda.
It's
He
like,
made me feel as though I was special. He really did. And that took me out of all the negative things that people had said to me, teachers, the other kids, I didn't have any friends. I didn't go anywhere. And I would see my compatriots going out and enjoying themselves, at the weekend, they would all go out together. I wasn't there. So I didn't belong to that group. So the transition was very, very difficult for me. It was a very painful transition.
yeah. So tell me about your husband. Tell me about what he was like. What was his aspirations, and how did his and your aspirations intertwine together?
Well, in the same way, how it intertwined, in the same way that he said to me, you've got potential and look at yourself, you can do X, Y, and Z. He said to me, Lynn, I have always wanted to be a policeman. I have always wanted to serve in my community.
Mhm,
And I said, well, so what's stopping you?
mhm.
What's stopping you? And he applied to the Metropolitan Police and he got in, and he became the second Black police officer,
Wow.
um, in London. So that was where he was beginning to make his mark, but he wasn't there for long because he was killed in the line of duty. Our son wasn't born. In fact, it was days. I was pregnant, and it was days before he was born that my husband was killed. So he passed away and left me with this son, which I call my gift. And that was very, very hard, because now here, the most important person who had told me that you've got potential, you can go anywhere you want to go, and our lives intertwining and so on, he was now gone. He was gone. And here was I again, I felt as though I was back at square one. I had lost my confidence. I had lost the sense of self, and it was really, really hard time in my life to go through that. It was traumatic.
Mm.
And it's hard to explain how it was, I think, unless a person has gone through that, losing your husband and losing and giving birth to a son. They're both traumatic events in a person's life. So, and those two happened to me at virtually the same time.
I think it was 9 days after your husband had passed away, your son was born. Is that right?
It was a week.
A week?
Yes, yes, yes.
Wow. But you called your son Michael after his father. Is that right?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
And he's your gift, the gift.
And he's my gift. Yes, the best gift. Yeah.
But how I don't even know. I can't even begin to imagine. But how do you start putting your life back together? You've got the responsibility of a young child who you love and want to change, but at the same time you've got that loss that you're also the grieving.
Mm.
Did you get through that? How did your family, what was it, faith? What was it that helped you to navigate that space?
Yeah. I think that there were two things. But first of all, it was my faith, because I had to believe that I would make it. And of course, when you're going through grief, bereavement, grief, loss, you are at risk because, I suffered. I wanted to die. I didn't want to live. And that was the truth. So that was a kind of depression that I was going through. But then at the back of that, because I was so fortunate to have a really caring, loving mother, a very resilient mother, along with my siblings, helped me to come through that period and to, as you say, negotiate that space. It was years before I actually went out to work or did anything. In fact, my mother looked after my son for the first 2 years of his life. I was there, I was in the house, but she was looking after him. She was caring for him. In the midst of all that, I knew that I had to support my son. And so I had to try and fight then for compensation from the Metropolitan Police.
Explain that. So your husband, who has died in the line of duty.
Yes.
Right. So you'll get his widow pension, I suppose. But
yes, it was a small widow's pension.
Yeah, because he hadn't been with the force for very long.
Yes, which was not fair.
Yeah.
Which was not fair. He hadn't been for very long, but the fact is that he was a police officer. He had passed out training school, and he was allocated to a station, so it wasn't fair. So I felt as though I was kind of destitute. Well, not I felt, I was, because days after, they told me that I had to leave the police accommodation where we were living, so I was homeless as well. Wow. I mean, when I unpack it and look at it, there are so many different layers to it that it is difficult for anyone to comprehend. Well, how did you manage all of that? How did you manage that? It was very, very difficult to manage it. And but I believe that the way I managed it was to try and fight back, to try and gain the strength to fight back. And the courage as well. The courage to fight for what I wanted, because I knew that unless they compensated me for my husband's death, there was no way that I could support him. I wasn't in a job. I wasn't qualified, So fighting back was actually the mechanism, I would say, that actually did it.
So tell me something. Were you angry with the police?
Yes, I was angry with I was angry because, I was kind of thinking, did they set this up? For years, I felt like that. I was also angry because there was another person in the car, and that person came out totally unscathed. It was only my husband that died. And I was angry because no one contacted me after he had died, and we had the funeral and they gave me the little pension. No one contacted me. In fact, I didn't have any contact with the police until nearly maybe 12, 15 years later.
Wow.
Yeah, I had no contact with them, until they decided that they were going to every year have this commemoration for officers who had lost their lives in the line of duty. And they wrote to me and said, we are doing this, and would you like to come?
Considering the role that he had in terms of the duty of care to the public, in a sense, the fact that he had died in the line of duty, you would have thought that they would have that same duty of care for you who had experienced such a tragic loss.
Indeed. Indeed.
So tell me then, very quickly, about this compensation. What did you have to do? What happened?
Well, I had to go through the courts in order to gain compensation. And I had to employ a solicitor. I suppose in that I was fortunate because the police have solicitors,
right,
and they got one of their solicitors to act on my behalf. And when the case was first heard, they said, no, you shouldn't have compensation because Michael went through the red lights. Okay, that was what they say, that he didn't take due care. So I appealed against that because I felt that it was unjust, it was unfair. He only went through the lights because he was given a call, and he went. And once he went, it was unfortunate that there was another police car going to the same incident, and they both collided. And he came out of this car. These cars, the little panda cars, they weren't sophisticated. So, and he just died on the impact, of that injury. So, I felt that, it was important for them to remember what I had, or to acknowledge what I had suffered, but there wasn't any acknowledgement of that, I think that there were times I was lucky, again, that I was good at writing. So if I had a specific need in relation to Mike, I would write to them, the orphan, they used to call it the orphans board or something. So I would write to them and say, there is this need, and they would give me a few £100. But the process of going through that, I had to go through the courts. And when they refused me compensation, I appealed, and there were these 3 judges who said, no, this is not fair, this is not right. He died in the line of duty, and it was because of that I got the compensation.
Wow. And it changed the law, didn't it? Did it change?
It did. Well, it changed things it was a landmark case, and it turned up in the law books because it was one of the first cases where a ruling by the court had been overturned, and also within the police force, within the Met, they said that it was the first time that officers who had lost their lives in the line of duty, their widows or widowers could apply then for compensation. So I was kind of like leading the way. And although I didn't begin with that intention in mind, that was the outcome that I had. So I ended up not only helping myself, but I helped others through my own bravery and courage to do that.
I'm just thinking about it. You would have only been, because you would have only been in your early 20s.
Yes.
When this happened.
Yes, because I had Mike when I was 20.
And so that the courage, the determination, the perseverance, and that sense of injustice. That an injustice needs to be righted. And unfortunately, the judges heard your cry and they agreed with you.
Yes. But had I sat back and said, okay, so this is the law, this is the decision that they've made,
Mhm.
I wouldn't have got the compensation, but because I said, no, this is like you said, a ranking injustice. This
Yeah.
is not fair,
Yeah.
and I need to be able to support my son.
Yeah.
So, and that was how I did it. That was the process.
Because it is such an amazing story. That's just the first element. So you're in your early 20s,
Yes,
right?
I was 20. I was literally 20 years old. When it happened, I had Mike on my 21st birthday. I think I was, no, I wasn't on my 20th birthday.
You had Mike on your 20th birthday, so the two of you share the same
We
birthday.
sang the same birthday. Yes.
He was your gift.
Yes.
He was your gift.
He was.
And I know, so going forward, being able then to support your son as he decided on what he wanted to do. What about time for you? Because you were still, as I said, he was a gift on your 20th birthday. But what about you? You're looking after him, but who's looking after you? What decisions did you make?
I decided to, as I said to you before, to stay at
Mhm.
home and to look after him. There was nobody looking after me. It was only the support I had from my family.
Yeah.
So I was on my own. And because I was compensated, I was able to buy actually the home I'm still living in today.
Mhm.
Yeah. And so I said, it's you and me, Mike, against the world. That's what it is. So, for a lot of people who have lost somebody, they think that they have to have someone else to fill that gap. But I just didn't feel that need to do that. I felt I wanted to concentrate on him. And so I plowed all my energies into him. And I didn't want it to be said that you cannot be what you want to be.
Mhm.
So I supported him through his education. I saw the gifts, the talents that he had, and it was remarkable. It really was remarkable because we like kind of grew and matured together.
Right. Yeah.
So we were doing a lot of activities, and that kept my mind away from, oh, well, I need a partner. But
Mhm.
also because my mom had lost her husband, and she had said to me, I don't want anybody to come along and mistreat my children. I kind of had that in the back of my mind. I don't want that for my son.
Yeah.
So I made this firm decision that I wasn't going to get married, and I didn't
Mhm.
for 47 years. I stayed on my own for 47 years.
Wow. But in that time, your son, you and your son, you and Michael against the world, and he's achieved some great things, and
Yes,
so have you.
yes,
So have you. So
yes,
because you're, I still keep going back to the fact that you were young, very young when all of these events had happened to you, and you
yes,
yourself and Michael kind of like grew up together, as it were.
yes.
What was it then that got you into? Because we've only spoken about part of your life. You're a life coach. You've done so many things with your life. So
Yes.
tell us about what it was that helped you to make some of those decisions going forward.
Well, I started to think, well, I can't sit here and do nothing.
Mm-hmm.
I've got to try and make something of myself. So that was when I started to study.
Mm-hmm.
And study became the conduit for better things, because the more I studied, the more I realized that what Michael said was true.
Mm-hmm.
I did have this potential.
Yeah.
And I started out just by doing a course in psychology, and then I kind of went into social work, and I got qualified to become a social worker. I did that. And within a year of qualifying as a social worker, I became a manager. So I was now a leader. I was leading people. I'm not saying it was easy, but that was what I was doing.
Yeah.
So leadership became very important to me, because I could now show that even though I had gone through a lot, I was resilient, and
Mm-hmm.
I could lead others, and I could help.
Mm-hmm.
So that was that. And of course, the key way in which I help is that I helped Mike to become a doctor.
Right.
So that's my That's the best thing I think I would say, my crowning glory. And not only is a doctor, he's a very good doctor. Yeah, yeah. So he did that. He's done exceptionally well.
Yeah.
So it feels to me like as though, even though I had gone through a hard time, as saying to you, it was tough, even though I'd suffered that, the outcome has been absolutely way above anything I kind of expected. I didn't expect that one day I would be sitting here, that I would be talking to you or talking to anyone or writing a book telling people about my story, you know? So I've done a lot of stuff. And I mean, you know, I did an MPhil,
Mhm.
and then I did a PhD, which was great.
Yeah.
A whole life of studying. You know, it was a life of commitment, first of all to my son, and then commitment to myself. And
Yeah.
that was when I began to grow, you know, mature and make a difference in the lives of so many people, so many students, you know.
Can I ask what area of social work you worked in?
Childcare.
Childcare. The reason
Yes.
I say a couple of reasons is because I'm just thinking about when I read through your book, and I will show everyone the book in a few minutes. When I read through the book, it seemed to me, and having listened to your story, those emotions that you had experienced when you had been left after your father had died and been left in those situations with that family, or with that lady who wasn't very kind and everything like that, and all the other kind of like tragic events, you actually used those and channeled those experiences to enable you to be an excellent social worker in helping other children so that they wouldn't have to go through. Am I right in saying
You
that?
are absolutely right. You are absolutely right. I just love children. And I think that children, as you hear me say, my son was a gift. I think that children are a gift and
Mhm.
that they deserve to be treated well, you know, to be loved, to be well cared for, to be given a place in life. And that was why I went into childcare. I've done all of my social work in childcare. I haven't done anything else, you know. And the teams, the social workers I've managed, it was always in childcare teams. You know,
Mm.
I care about children who have been abused, who've been maltreated, who have not been safeguarded, you know. I care about that. And
Mhm.
so that has been my life's work,
Mhm.
really.
Yeah.
The work I do now, I train a lot of foster carers.
Mhm.
And these foster carers are looking after children.
Yeah.
So I teach them how to be good parents to these children who have been neglected and rejected by their own parents, you know. And I say, this is, you know, this is a serious job you're doing, you know.
You know what? I'm disappointed with myself. I've tried to manage this, and I want to get so much more information from you, right? I always have to hand over and see if there's anyone in the audience who'd like to ask a question. So I'm gonna put it out there at this time and see if
Okay.
there's anyone who wants to ask a question. But I know that there are other things in terms of like the working as a life coach, and also
Yes.
the other achievements which you've written 2 books. Am I right in
Yes.
saying that you've written
Yes.
2 books? One
Yes.
which was more of an academic book, and then based on your thesis, and then
Yes.
which is kind of like your memoirs or your experiences. Um,
Yes.
and as a result of that, can you think when you think back, right, throughout all of the times that you've had, when you think back, could you have ever envisaged that life would have panned out the way that it has for you?
Never, never in a million years. But you know what I would say against that is that my faith,
Mm-hmm.
my belief in God, and that He could do all things and that He could change things around for me. I think that is what gives me the claim today that you know, if I was to envisage anything, it was through the power of God, not of myself, but
Yeah.
through him doing it and helping me to make the right choices, because it was always about that, making the right choice. And when I made the choices I made, I just stuck with them.
Right.
You know, and I think that that is what got me where I am today. But I think of myself, no, I would have said, Lynda, no, you can't make it. You can't, you can't do it.
Michael saw the potential in more ways than one, right?
Yes.
He saw that you had everything that he wanted, and that you could be so much more than
Yeah.
other people had ever told you that you could be.
Yes, yes,
You know?
absolutely.
And it's just really wonderful to hear your story and to hear your incredible journey. As Tanwea has said, it is an incredible journey that you have gone on.
Mhm.
I'm gonna just I've got two final questions, because I'm going to actually say to people, if you want to hear a little bit more, if you want to read a little bit more, then I'm going to quickly share the screen, because Lynda does have a book out. She has a book out which actually outlines all of the story which she was saying today. And where is it? Come on. Right. I'm gonna do a promo here, because I think that everyone should read this book. It's a love story. Even though it says hard truth, it's a love story. And that's what I think anyhow. I've read it, and it is such a beautiful, well-written book, which goes through the adversities, but there's always an underlying sense of love and faith which goes through the book. So I'm going to recommend this as a book to read, right? So there's the details, peeps. Take a picture of it, whatever, screenshot it, please do. Lynda, before we end the conversation today, I'm going to ask one final question, because I haven't seen. Right, I'm going to ask one final question of you, a combination of questions, right?
Okay.
What advice would you have given to your, I don't know whether to say 16-year-old self, or at that point of when you heard about the loss of your husband? What advice would you give that person, your younger self? And then the second one is, what do you think you would say would be the wow factor looking back now?
Yeah. What advice would I say to my younger self? This is when I lost my husband, yeah?
Yeah.
I would say, don't do it. And by that, I mean that when he died, I wanted to die too.
Mm.
I wanted to jump out of the window. But
Mm.
now, looking back, I know that that was not the thing I should have done.
Mm.
You know, so I would say, no, don't do that. You know, you don't need to jump over it. You don't need to die, because you are going to get over this. It may take time, but you're gonna. So I would say that to my younger self now. You know, just be patient. Just take time. Just give yourself time to heal. And
Mm.
once you heal, you will be able to help others. I didn't know it then,
Yeah.
but I know it now.
Yeah. And then
Yeah.
the other one, what would you say is
Wow.
the factor?
Oh man, the wow factor is, look at what you have achieved.
You already answered that one, because you said, you already said to me earlier on, Michael is my crowning joy, my achievement. Just look.
Yeah,
And
just look at that. Just look at that. How many people, the wow factor is, how many people in this whole wide world will have been able to do that? I mean, maybe some people would have been, but you know, I'm not saying I'm the only one.
Yeah.
But look at what, oh my goodness gracious me.
Yeah.
You reached for the stars, Lynda.
That's right. That's right. Lynda, you're amazing. You are absolutely amazing. Right? And there's many lessons that I've learned from listening to you, because I remember growing up and seeing you and seeing Michael. And oftentimes people think because of how people express themselves, how they display themselves, people can think, oh, everything's good in their lives, not knowing the stories behind it. I say, I know, having heard this story, it's such a beautiful. There are tragedies, but the end of the story is beautiful. It's a beautiful ending.
Hey, I'm not going to tell people about the ending because I want them to buy the book and see what the ending.
That's what I mean.
It's the cliffhanger.
Yeah, I see your hand.
Yes, hi Lynda, fantastic.
Hi.
Thank you very much for sharing this. Now, it was just a comment really to say that it was going to be just one wow if we didn't know about your story, and now we learn about your journey. It's a double wow, actually, what you've achieved. Fantastic.
Wow.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. So Lynda, once again, a really big thank you. I'm hoping that I can get you here at Imperial so that we can have a proper book launch or a book sale, or where you can just talk to people about your book in person, because I think it's just such a power. And guys, I know what's in the book, right? And I'm on Lynda's side. I'm not telling you anymore. Because it's a beautiful story, right? So I just want to say, Lynda, once again, a really big thank you for sharing that story, for really sharing that story, right, of your experiences. I think it's something that a lot of people need to hear and need to know, because it gives us all courage, right? Courage, the hard truth that we can grow out of our adversities. And I love it. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure talking to you, Wayne.
And you. I'm going to just share with everyone what we're going to have on next week. But it's just been wonderful. So next week we've got Dr. Ravi Desai, and he's an earnest Rutherford Fellow in the Center of Fusion, Space and Astrophysics, at Warwick University. He's also used to be at Imperial. So he is going to be our guest next week, and it's going to be a really interesting conversation we'll have. If you haven't seen any of the other interviews, then please go to our YouTube page, which is tinyurl.com/belonging-IAO, and you'll be able to see some other wonderful stories. I always put this one up, I might take it away, but this is just a piece which goes through some of the 100 guests which we've had previously on here, and they're all such interesting stories. But none of this would happen if it wasn't for the fact that we've got so many wonderful people who are willing to share their experiences. And you know, by sharing our experiences, we learn so much more. We learn about each other, we learn about our cultures, we learn about our own humanity. And I think from that, we can gain our sense of belonging and know how we can belong. So until next week, I want to say have a good weekend, and we will see you again, as I said, next week. So thanks again, Lynda, and everyone for tuning in, and please come again. All right.
Okay, thank you.